Wake up your morning in a brand new way with the positive people, places, events, and things in and around your neighborhood and around the world. No matter where you live, your mornings are about to get better. It's the refreshing way to start your day. No doom or gloom, just bright sunshine no matter what the weather. Metro Magazine with Bonnie McDaniel. Inspiring, informative, intelligent, Ion. Positively the best way to start your morning.
Can I ask you a question? I'll stop you right there. You said Ashley, her family. Is this a Christian family?
Yeah, they are Southern Baptist Christian. And
a very interesting dynamic there. And the point I want to make is how people, when you get beyond our differences and you focus on the things that are important to us as human beings, that is the key to whatever crisis you might be in. And I wanted to make that point. Go
well,
ahead.
It shocked me. It shocked me that her parents were supportive. Knowing that they were sending their daughter into a danger zone. But not only that, they just gave so much. They bought us everything from antibiotic wipes to boots and Wellingtons for us to sift through. It was like we were expecting the worst, and we saw the worst. I mean, it was beyond the expectations of a lot of people.
So did Ashley go with you?
Ashley did. She went with me.
And you just met this young woman.
I just met her, and her dad was like, I would hope that if this happened, that someone would support my daughter the same way. So it was the whole thing was just very surreal.
So talk about what happened. You got the supplies and
so I opened the next day, we opened the door of our dorm and we saw overnight. I mean, I went to a small liberal arts school, but people had donated supplies and they put them in front of the door. And so word had spread and it was a very beautiful moment. It was kind of, people were discouraging, then all of a sudden everybody was
I think what's interesting is you look at that moment and you look at what you do now, because you do a lot of the same thing right now, gathering supplies to send to Syria. But we'll get to that in a moment. So let's finish the story.
So we embarked on the way. I promised the dean that I would leave in the morning, and once the storm hit. So I was like, I'm going to stay up awake all night, and I don't remember falling asleep. But apparently, at some point, I fell asleep on the couch watching news. We got up early. We embarked on the way, and I remember listening to. This is my first time really listening to country music, but the Dixie Chicks and all of these just like really
you have an
sad
Arab woman from the South listening to this,
and I love it. I love it, and we were just singing the songs at the top of our lungs, and just it was positive, engaging. And what I loved about the country music is it was life stories of people losing things and finding themselves, and it was it was perfect timing. It was like all the songs you listen to just fit the moment. And so yes, country music and I are now best friends. And it surprises so many people that get in my car. They're like, what are you doing? You're like a hillbilly Arab woman. So we started driving down to Mississippi, and we knew that we were going to get turned away because everybody started saying there was military checkpoints and it's crisis mode and all this stuff, and none of that mattered to me. And where there's a will, there's a way. I always grew up with a very determined family, and I was going to get through. And how didn't matter, and I just knew I was going to get through. So we ended up driving through and listened to country music the entire way, and it took us a lot longer than expected, obviously, with traffic and cars stopped. And a few days later, we figured, the streets were all uprooted. All the landmarks that I knew were not there. I had no clue where I was. Literally, I was totally disoriented. And, we managed to go to where my parents' office was and parked the car there because we were exhausted and needed sleep. And we'd heard all these stories about people killing each other. And here we are having a car full of supplies. It was a truck, and so because it was a farm truck, the sides had these hydraulic things, and they opened. You could put hay inside, so that's where most of the supplies were. So they were hidden. And then we had tarps, and we had hid everything so that we wouldn't be attacked. But I remember before we left, my friend's dad was like, "Do you guys want a shotgun?"
I was about to say, because in the South, that's what we do. We ride with a gun in the back.
I was like, give me a shotgun. And Ashley's face of terror. She was like, shotgun? Are we going to shoot somebody? I'm prepared to shoot somebody. So we ended up sleeping outside, and it was humid. It was humid. There were mosquitoes everywhere. We're right on the water in August after a hurricane. And it smelled. It was disgusting. And all I wanted to do was find my parents. And at this point, all the communication was down, so I couldn't get in touch with anybody. And we drove by where the house was. And you can't get to where the house was. But, my heart started sinking the closer we got to where it was, because you could see everything else was destroyed. And at that moment, I knew we had no home. But obviously, my parents were still my priority.
So where did you find your mom?
The moment of seeing my mom was surreal. I mean, the picture will never leave my mind. She looked like a ghost. That's the only way I could describe it. Looked like a ghost. I mean, she was there, but like her brain wasn't her. She was just not there. She was there in body, and then when you ask her, she would just start sobbing. It was like she apparently had found Clorox on the street and thought it was a good idea to start cleaning herself with pure Clorox because she was so worried about getting diseases, it was disgusting. There's no way to describe the environment down there. And she just looked just droopy and sad, and they were wearing scrubs and hadn't eaten, and they were getting hospital food and rationing it out between members of our family. But I remember my dad was shocked. He's like, "How did you get down here?" My mom said, I knew Hazami was coming. And
wow.
It was one of those things. She said, "I knew she was coming. I knew she was going to make it down." And she said that, anyway, that I was her angel.
But to know your children like that, and I'm a mom, and you really do as a parent, your children, you know what they're made out of. And for your mom to know that, what did that feel like? Because it was almost like you knew, but to have a parent say that, it's like confirmation. What did that feel like for you?
It was empowering in an odd way, because I think it also, in my mind, I don't know if in my parents' mind, but it changed my relationship with them. Because here I was, brought them all these supplies, and from an Arab background, and it's similar to a lot of families here too. But parents are always providers, and you'll always stay a little girl. I mean, it's not like you reach 18 and you're done and you leave and you're disconnected. Culturally, until you're married, you're still very much the burden of your father, and mother not so much, but definitely the burden of your father. And so, bringing food and bringing supplies and being strong enough to make it down and, lie my way through checkpoints, as horrible as it is to lie, I think, if anything, it solidified in their minds that I was a woman with a mission, whatever that mission may be. And at the time, that mission was unknown to everybody, including myself. I was just a happy-go-lucky college kid spending my time, whitewater rafting on my weekends. So when I saw my dad, the one moment, defining moment for my father too, was just we were sitting in one of the offices, and obviously there's no AC, there's no anything, and just sleeping spread out on the floor. And Ashley and I had spent the night in the car a few nights before, laying actually on the bed on the back of the truck, looking up at the stars, listening to country music. And that was like such a big bonding experience for us. That was where we slept for a few days, and we were obviously very afraid, didn't know what was going to happen. So sleeping in the office, although it was hot and humid and disgusting, was great. But I remember bringing cups of fruit, and I had one cup of fruit that my dad ate, and he leaned back, and we were all just sitting kind of huddled around with supplies everywhere. Leaned back, and he was like, "I'm replete." And then he looks at my friend Ashley and I, and he says, "Do you know what replete is? What replete means?" And I had no clue. Ashley had no clue. And he said, "It's that moment where you're full just perfectly to where you're not overly full, but you feel good, like you have enough in your stomach." And I just sat here and I just looked at my dad. This is a man that just lost everything, and here he is trying to educate us and taught me a new word. And it was
replate's a very good word.
Over a cup of fruit. And Islamically also we talk about when you eat as a Muslim, you're supposed to always keep a third of your stomach. So a third food, a third water, and a third empty, so that you never feel that sense of being over full. And there's always room. You can have more, but you're content with what you have. Right. So it's like that moment just where everything just collides, and you see all these teachings that you grew up with being lived, and you're experiencing it in such an odd way. And I don't know why that specific moment over that cup of fruit. This is a man who's always provided for me, and he was so content over a cup of horrible canned fruit that didn't even taste like fruit. I mean, it tasted like rubber. But, and that was a very powerful moment.
Really? Buds, what's up, man? You left some leaves burning out here.
Yeah, I just came in just for a second.
Come on, man. If it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave. You could torch the whole neighborhood.
It's a good point there, Smokey.
9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Why I do what I do is that I think when people, a lot of the ignorance comes about as a result of people, number one, not knowing because they've not been informed in a positive way, and also not having the ability to become engaged in a positive way. And I think it's important that we use whatever resources, that being the, especially in this day and age, the internet, using social media, to tell stories, because I think your story is a very compelling one, because I think there are a lot of young women out there like yourself who are in their 20s and their 30s who perhaps are not informed in the ways that they need to be in order to be empowered to do the work that they are capable of doing, very much like Hazami. So I am so grateful that you, and I know this was a very painful thing for you to do, to talk about a couple of the moments in your life that led you to be where you are right now. So I'm very grateful that you agreed to share your story. I also would like, if you will, to talk about social media a little bit more and some of the things that you're doing right now. Because I know you have some events coming up, and you're going to continue with those events to empower women, especially people from other regions around the world. So talk about that for a moment.
I mean, I think something I've realized very, I've confronted with, not even realized, it's in the forefront of everything we do, is that we are all connected to technology.
Right.
And we all use technology, but how we use it is very different.
Right.
And technology, looking at technology as something that could be transformative in so many ways. You have access to information, you have access to resources, you have access to people in ways that you never had before. Geography no longer matters.
Exactly.
In some countries where internet's restricted, and that's a whole nother conversation, but the majority of the world has access to the same resources. You're looking at a world of 7 billion cell phones with 6 billion people. So every single person on this earth has access to a mobile phone, or there's enough for every person on this earth. And that is a very staggering statistic. And when you look at the growth of things like Instagram and Facebook, and people are engaging with them, my passion came from how can people engage with them constructively, and this idea of social good and social impact, and connecting more people who have positive messages and resources to be able to contribute to people with positive ideas. How can you leverage social media and media in general to connect people and technology? So there's some great movements that are happening internationally around the space. A lot of companies are contributing actively in this sphere. I wanted to take that to the region, to the Middle East, North Africa, for several reasons. Number one is that social media around the Arab world is very negative.
Right.
It's plagued by horrible news about disempowerment of women. It's plagued by wars. It's plagued by all of these negative things. And I by no means will say that those are not happening. They are happening, but they're happening at a much smaller level than all the phenomenal work that's happening that is getting no recognition, no telecasting, no global attention. And that to me is destructive, because when you can't highlight the amazing things that can be accelerated and leveraged, then you're focusing on the negativity, then it's going to breed more negativity, because you're breeding resentment and anxiety and animosity and ignorance internationally. So looking at creating a social good movement around media was what led us to start the MENA Social Good event. And ultimately what it is, it's looking at the power of technology for being transformative and empowering communities economically, socially, financially, ultimately, but then also politically. How can people better and more effectively use the tools that they're already using? We're not talking about introducing new things or going out and buying something. You're already on Facebook. Be on Facebook with an impact. You're already on Twitter. Tweet for a positive cause. Generate positive content. And that's really the movement that we're trying to create with the Social Good event, is kind of disrupting the narrative of what's happening and injecting a more constructive channel, and it's gone viral, and it's been very amazing because we kind of put this out initially. I was even hesitant. I mean, we talk about women, and the whole idea of imposter syndrome, where it's like, why am I in a place where I'm getting so much traction from massive corporations that probably have access to phenomenal proposals, yet they're contacting me.
And what's interesting is I should mention that Hazami was a part of our Women Are Talking initiative this past year. And this event was a virtual global movement where we had literally 1 million women we were able to track who, through social media, and the whole concept behind Women Are Talking, which is somewhat different from what you're doing, is that the focus behind our work is to engage women on a global level, to talk about the things that they are concerned about, and also to bring people like the work that you're doing and women in other areas who are doing good things together in one virtual space so that we can begin to become empowered. And Hazami was a part of that movement, and the outcome was just amazing. And so it's really interesting to see how you're taking this really to another level. Not just talking to women, but really talking to communities and dealing with the things that are really holding us back as individuals and also as communities. So I'm really excited to see about, what's going to be the outcome of the work that you're doing. Now, as a part of this, I think I saw also, we don't get a chance to talk a whole lot, but aren't you engaging, isn't there a music component to this? Because I saw some things that you were doing. Beat for the. Tell me the name. So
that's another NGO that I helped start called Beats, Rhymes, and Relief.
Right. Thank you.
And it's started by some close friends of mine who they're from the production industry and really had this dream of ultimately crowdfunding music, and it's something that unites people across so many boundaries.
Now, is this connected to?
It's not.
It's totally different.
So they're using music to raise awareness about charity.
Okay.
And it's totally different. But I mean, I think so much of the work that I end up doing is very intertwined. It all is social community impact. And I think one thing that I'd love to just mention, when we talk about community impact, we talk about fluff. In our minds, it's like soft skills, soft diplomacy, fluff. But it's at the core of how people think, and how people think drives how they act and how they vote and how they buy and how they purchase and how they engage. And I think that's sometimes we don't focus enough on the social aspects of business and of politics and of all these different things which drive people to make the decisions they make.
Because people deal with people. They don't deal with inanimate objects.
When you're socialization, I mean, you're socialized to have the perspective that you have. And I think studying sociology at the time, everybody said, what the heck are you going to do with sociology? It was just a fun subject for me. It was amazing. And now sociology drives the way I think about so much stuff, where it's, this world of meta-narratives. We all have a narrative. And you're entitled to your narrative.
Right.
My reality does not diminish your reality.
Exactly.
And being able to realize that ultimately is the core of empathy. And I may not sympathize with you. I may not understand what you're doing, but I can still understand from your perspective that you may be different from me. And it's this idea that, I love the quote, Malcolm, and I'm forgetting his last name, but he said, diversity is the art of thinking independently together. Diversity and multinationalism is not about creating this flat world. It's not about saying, Americans need to kind of expand with their globalized ways around the world. It's about embracing other people's diversity and realize that we become more powerful as a society when we can leverage each other's strength and have that fabric and grow that fabric.
Now, let me ask you, because we're running out of time. Wow, and this is interesting. I'm still stuck on the 20-something. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, what does Hazami's life look like? What would you like to have accomplished if you were to look at that right now, 10 years from now?
I can't even plan my day 2 days ahead.
Well, we all dream, though. It's like, 10 years from now, I would like to see X happen because of the work that I'm doing.
And that's it. I think about impact,
right, and
not where I want to be. And
no. That's really what I'm talking about. The impact, because you're doing work. What is it that you'd like to see happen as a result of the things you're doing right now?
I want to inspire more people to do more.
Okay.
And I think leadership to me, and I'm very blessed to be in a place of leadership. But that quote that a leader is, if you encourage someone to do more, act more, think more, you were a leader.
Exactly.
And that to me really just being true to that, but also being true to myself. I think oftentimes you get so caught up doubting yourself, and you also get so caught up getting ahead of yourself that staying grounded and staying true to who I am is something that I hope to continue with. And it's challenging. And most people see all the positive, awesome work and the speeches and whatever, but they don't realize oftentimes that when I'm with myself, it's that self-doubt of what am I doing?
And that's interesting, because I think that is something that is very, very much the case with a lot of women. And I'm stopping there because I'm thinking 3 nights ago, I had this crazy panic attack where there are a lot of things that I'm involved in doing, because there are a lot of things that I want to do with the work that I'm doing. And I began to imagine what was before me, and I went into sheer panic thinking, oh my gosh, I can't do this, and I can't do this for this reason. And people I don't think they understand that you do have, as leaders, those moments with yourself where you are overwhelmed because it is so enormous. Leaders don't think in little chunks. We think in real big picture. And sometimes it's hard to wrap your heart and your arms around that. It's moments, but it doesn't cloud overall. And so I absolutely understand what you're talking about. But I think, though, when I think about some of the things, those moments that you've shared with us, I think that that person inside you, that Hazami that very few people see, and I was blessed to see that when you were telling that story about the Katrina experience, I was able to see that, which is why you're sitting in that chair right now, because there's so much more. And I want other women to realize that they have that same power in themselves, and they can do. And you're giving them, helping them to have the courage to do that. And I am just so pleased and so honored to know you. And my job right now is to make sure that everybody gets to know Hazami Barmada. And she's crying, and she's going to make me cry.
It's one of those, I appreciate what you're doing. And I think it's one of those things where so often you get so caught up being who others want you to be. And you don't take that moment to appreciate yourself. You don't take that moment to say, it's normal. We all go through ups and downs. We're never ever fully positive and fully where we want to be.
Right.
And I think, I'm a quote person, and that's what drives me. I mean, I'm very much a quote person, but this whole idea of perfection being a process and not an end point.
Right.
And having to remind yourself that always. And it makes me cry, because I think you brought up something very important, which is so many people don't take the time to look at what's behind. And we're caught in a world where people are so highly critical, especially as women, of each other. And why do you have that exposure? And why do people listen to you? And why did you do that program? Somebody else was better suited for it. And things like that. And then you sometimes take a step back and you get caught up with that. And then you have to say, well, hold on. I have to really be true to who I am. And that's what.
Yeah. And I have a lot of women who come to me because of the blessings, I will say, that are allowed in my life. And they'll say, I want to be like you. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I caution them, because nobody just shows up. There's a price. And the greater the impact, the greater the influence, the higher the price that has been paid for where you are.
And there's no way back.
There is no way back. There's no free pass for this.
But I'll tell you, the most motivating thing is when I get emails from people in countries all over the world that just randomly stumbled upon my post somewhere. And I don't even know how it gets posted. But, just the things that they say that are so genuine. And it makes me just sit there and say, wow, so they're talking about me? Because that's not the me I see in the mirror. I see that self-doubt all the time.
Because you're focused on your work.
But it's amazing. I think, and that the fact that people reach out and inspire and encourage you and hold you accountable also is a beautiful thing. And I think I applaud you on highlighting stories, and thank you very much for including me in it.
Well, you are welcome, my dear. And I can't wait for the rest of the world to see. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to, actually a few seconds, to look into that camera
Can I wipe my tears?
That's your texture, my dear. Let them chill. And tell people how they can help Hazami with some of the work that you're doing right now. There's your camera.
Wow, that's oftentimes we don't talk about how others can help us. I think the biggest thing is lending a helping hand and supporting, expand, and enlarge the audience of the work that I'm doing. A big part of my passion is development in the Middle East, North Africa, humanizing the region, but also providing opportunities for diaspora engagement and resource allocation to kind of allow us to do more, to dream more, to accomplish more. And it's a global movement, and it really requires not only partnership, but support across the board from various people who believe. And I think that's the movement that's going to create the tipping point that allows the region to be the proud place that I call home. And it will be home, and will be the home for my kids to come. So, finding a way to embrace it and empower it and lift it up and elevate it is a passion and dream of mine. So,
okay, and where can they reach you? Your website, your my email, or however they can contact you?
Yeah, my email is Hazami, Hazami, at Barmada, which is my last name, Barmada, consulting.com. And I always welcome all types of opportunities, and I look forward to working with more people.
Hazami, thank you so much. And we are out of time, and I just can't wait for the next opportunity to share with you another amazing woman. It's been fun hanging out, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, and I'll see you on the flip side.
Stay tuned, there's more to come.
Queen Bee is a book about some of the habits, some of the things that we women do really to undermine ourselves and undermine other women. And it's something that we really can't afford to do any longer. It's actually a book that is a combination of research that I've done, interviewing other women and men about what is it that has kept us over the years from becoming the empowered women that we say we are. I have taken interviews from women who talk about some of the experiences they've had in working with other women, either in the capacity of just having relationships in different types of settings, whether it be in the corporate boardroom or a lot of the women that I talk to are entrepreneurs, but really just delving into not just the things that we do in terms of day-to-day, to perform our jobs, but really looking at the things that are really holding us back. One of the things that's interesting to me is the fact that if you take a woman, an average woman, and if you're honest, and put her in a room with 15, 20 other women and have a gorgeous woman walk in the room, watch the reaction. Chances are very good she's not going to like her, and it has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that she, in their own minds, looks a certain way. If you take that and reverse it, and you are the woman who thinks that everything about yourself is intact, you're going to respond to that woman in a different way. And you're going to listen to her rather than look at her physical being. And that's what I want women to do. I want us to stop looking at what we have on, whether or not, we're thinner or heavier than the next woman, but really to look at who we are as women. I'm hoping, if nothing more, that by reading Queen Bee, women will start to really look at themselves for the amazing people that they are. To look at the gifts that each of us brings to the table. And we all have something unique, something special. I also hope women will finally own the fact that you came here to do something special that no one else can do. And not to compare yourself to someone else. Measuring and comparing are totally two different things, but really to begin to embrace the unique qualities and the strengths that you have. Because when we bring all of those qualities together, collectively, there isn't anything that women cannot do.
Up to 40% of businesses never recover after experiencing a major disaster. Make a plan at ready.gov/business.
As we continue our series on amazing women, we're going to be talking to Yolanda Spiva. She's the new CEO of the College Success Foundation. And so we're going to be having an in-depth discussion with her today, talking about what is it that made Yolanda show up in the position that she's in today, because I'm sure she has a wonderful story to share with our viewers this morning. So Yolanda.
Yes.
If I had to ask you, first of all, thank you so much for being a part of the series.
Certainly.
And sharing your journey with a lot of the young women who are going to be watching this. If someone were to ask you to describe in one word Yolanda Spiva, what would that word be?
I guess it would be determined.
Okay.
It's hard to encapsulate me in one word, but
okay.
I think one of the things about me in terms of how I operate is, I'm not a very linear person, so I don't think about things like I'm just going to go after this and get it, but I'm always determined to be my best and operate in excellence. And so in terms of the way I show up in the world, I always try to do that in the way that exudes determination and really trying to, just show up as the best person that I can. And so when I think about determination, it really feels comfortable to me in terms of how I'm able to sort of navigate life and, life's challenges personally and professionally.
Okay. Now, that is Yolanda in 2013.
Yeah.
Tell me, what was the journey like getting there? Because I'm sure that there was some influence, or maybe there was that aha moment in your life very early on that made you realize that this is how you were going to operate later in life. So talk about what were the influences in your life when you were a young woman growing up. And you grew up in the South, or?
No, I grew up in Rochester, New York.
Rochester, New York. Okay, so talk to us a little bit about what that was like.
Well, first of all, I think having grown up in Rochester, New York, where you had lots of major corporations that were headquartered there, like Xerox, Kodak, Bausch & Lomb, you saw lots of working professionals. And so around me in my neighborhoods and communities, there were two-parent homes. Everyone, worked. And so the value of a work ethic was very palpable and very strong. I attended the public schools, K through 12 there in Rochester. So academics, were emphasized in my home. My mom was an educator, and my father also worked as a sort of para-educator in the juvenile justice system of the state. And so seeing both sides of the proposition in terms of someone who was operating within the traditional system, but also seeing what can happen if you veer off the direct path and you do something negative, or you make the wrong choices, you can end up in this other alternative system. And so from my perspective, I mean, my mom was the youngest of 14 children, and her parents had not, they were farmers, and they did not exceed beyond an 8th grade education.
Now, were they farmers in New York or in the South?
Yeah, in the South, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Okay.
And so, they raised their children with a work ethic in terms of, we don't want you to have this life. We really want you to go to college. And so my mom and her siblings all attended college, and so they have varying degrees. She has a PhD, but her siblings have master's degrees, bachelor's, but they were all college educated. Okay. So from an very, very early on, I mean, it wasn't about if I was going to go to college, it was surely the expectation where, and, and so in terms of college, that was a foregone conclusion. So for me, I guess, it was about really being determined to go beyond the expectations, beyond any potential limitations. And so going to college was sort of, the thing that I was going to do. I finished high school at 16, so I went from New York to Atlanta for undergraduate school. At 16, I knew no one in Atlanta. I attended Spelman College. I knew no one there. And so when you think about trying to navigate a very different city, a very different type of environment, the North versus the South, and to navigate that as a young woman, really a teenager, that was a very interesting proposition. But I've always kind of been an old soul. So
and that's what I want to talk about, because, part of the things that I want, part of what I would like to do with this series is, because we have a lot of amazing women out there doing amazing things. And I think one of the jewels that you can share as a professional with young people who are looking at you and wondering, how do I get to where she is? There are some things inside Yolanda that makes you determined, that makes you understand that doing your best is important. And those are the things that I want to talk about. Sure. What are some of the values and things that were taught to you by your mom or your dad that help you to be able to tap into that? And that's what I'd like for you to share.
Well, the first thing was authenticity. I mean, I've always sort of marched to my own beat and never was a follower. It was always about being the head and not the tail.
And who encouraged you to do that?
Both of my parents did. I mean, that was very much a part of our life. If you came in the house and said someone was teasing you about something on your block or in the neighborhood, you know, they would say, well, is it true? And if the answer is no, well, then you don't worry about that. Right. So I always kind of walked with my head very held high, and some might, you know, perceive it as arrogance or may perceive it as self-confidence. It depends on your perspective. And so I think I would tend to perceive it as self-confidence because I never had a reason not to have confidence. And when you have, especially, I believe this for little girls, when you have a father that tells you positive things about you, especially, you're less likely to feel like you need other people to feed into your ego or to tell you you're beautiful or to tell you you're special. So having grown up with that, and I know I'm very fortunate in that regard, I had a very, very disciplined mother, a very, very firm mother. And my father, it's not that he was, you know, he threw caution to the wind, but he was more of the person that would say, hey, let her, you know, loosen the reins a little bit and let her see. But you have to understand, with me being so much younger than my peers, my mom was a little bit more guarded about.
Talk to me about what was it like when because you mentioned you graduated from high school when you were 16. So talk to me about your academic life when you were smaller, and what were some of the influences in your life outside of your parents?
Yeah, well, that was pretty much it, to be honest. I mean, I felt like, I only benchmarked myself against myself, and so I was never really cognizant of what other students were doing. I mean, my parents had a very high standard in terms of academics, and it was really about, you didn't just do the best that you could, you exceeded the best that you could. So if that's the best that you can do, now go further than that. So I always did well in school academically and prided myself on that. I really liked the fact that I was smart, and I liked the fact that teachers knew I was smart. And I was able to curry favor because of that, to be honest. I mean, so if I needed to, you know, attend an event and miss class, I was a student who I didn't have to go through a lot of trouble to get out of class, to do other things that would expose me to sort of the co-curricular parts of life, because I was able to do that. So I think I understood very early on that being smart got people's attention, that being academically inclined made people respect you. And because I sort of was a very mature child, I think that adults spoke to me in an adult way.
Exactly.
Because I was able to have adult conversation, I won't say adult, but more mature conversations with them. And I like that. I didn't like to be spoken to in a sort of diminutive way or in a way that condescended unto me. I liked being spoken to as a peer. I don't know where that came from, but I liked to be in conversations that were about something. And so just for as long as I can remember, and I was very good at, you know, typically, especially in the African American community, if you're a child and adults are having conversations, you know, they tell you a child stays in a child's place, you know, you move away. And
seen and not heard.
Seen and not heard. But I did that very well. And so I could be very quiet and listen and understand.
And you just bring up something interesting, because I very early on lived with my grandmother, and that was certainly a rule in our house.
Yes.
However, listening is very underrated, because when you listen, you learn a lot, especially if you're listening to your elders, wise elders. And so I want to go back to something you said that's real important, because this is a series on amazing women. And you said something that really hit home, and something that a lot of our girls have trouble with even today. And that is the idea of accepting the fact that you are smart. If you would talk about that and how important, and what were some of the things, and again, you're very fortunate in that you had parents who really supported you, but young women who perhaps are growing up, maybe they don't even have any of their parents around, or they don't have that support system. Is there something that you could advise them to do in terms of how to get that, that sense of I'm smart and I'm okay with it?
Sure. Well, first of all, I can tell you, although I had a lot of support at home for that, I got a lot of teasing at school.
And I want you to talk about that.
Yeah. So, teachers sometimes will make a big deal out of, wow, Yolanda, another A, great job. Or, well, everyone did poorly except for Yolanda. That puts a lot of pressure on the student, and you don't want that sort of attention.
Right.
I mean, I liked the attention that I was able to get teacher to student one-on-one. I did not like it broadcast amongst the class, and I had to grow comfortable with that, even to the point where my mom would say, I'd really appreciate it if, it's okay for you to, congratulate her in a way that is directed to her, but the whole class doesn't have to know about her. Because what it does is compare students and put us on a metric against one another. And so I think in terms of how I was able to mitigate that, I mean, essentially it was really about just being comfortable in the skin that I was in. And one of the things I would say is that some students will sort of dumb themselves down, and that's just to be very colloquial, or to sort of not try their hardest because they don't want others to tease them or to harass them about being smart. I can remember, though, a local newspaper doing an article about being smart, and my principal, I guess, recommended me for this. And this is when I think the movie Something About the Nerds was out, and they were asking about, who are nerds in your school and what does that mean? And I said I would self-identify as a nerd, and I didn't see anything wrong with that. And I still have that. Well, my mom still has the article in terms of that, because it was really also about sort of debunking myths and saying that, that's a term that someone has applied in a way to demean or belittle someone. Right. But if you own whatever it is, so it's not about the term, it's about the attributes. So if a nerd is someone who works hard, is determined, is focused, studies, and tries their best, then I guess I am one. So that was one of the things where I guess it's really about defining oneself. Right. And so, not allowing monikers to be the definition, but allowing attributes. And if you know you excel at certain things or you're good at something, don't allow anybody else to sort of cast any aspersions on that and make you feel bad about being fabulous and great.
I love it.
Yes.
Now, you bring up another point because, again, you were fortunate in that you grew up in an environment where you had a support system. And I want to talk about the importance of mentors for those young women who don't have that support system. And I really want you to speak to, because you're a professional woman, and I know that in your walk that you do a lot of mentoring and supporting, young women. But I want you to really talk about how important it is for other women out there, professional women, to mentor and to be that support system and let these young women who are coming up without that support know that they're okay. If you could speak to that for me.
Well, I would be happy to. And I'll tell you, believe it or not, I have never in my professional life I've had mentors who are people who have, said a good word, who have, given me advice loosely. But in terms of, and I'm not just saying, a formal mentoring where you were paired by an organization, but a formal mentor, someone who is in the position that I aspire toward, who has taken me under their wing. And that sort of speaks to something that I would just like to add, since I know this is a topic of concern for you, is how women connect with other women. Right. Because for some reason, this is not a competition. Exactly. There's enough work to go around. And a lot of times women are reluctant to say to another woman, I see you. I see what you could be. I see possibility in you. And I'm willing to connect with you. So if I'm already a CEO, think about if a CEO especially a female CEO had taken me under her wing many, many moons ago, where I could be. So this is, and I'm not going to say it's all me, because
No. This is something that is very pervasive, and which is why, and not to give a plug for my book, which is why I wrote Queen Bee, because there are so many awesome women out there, and which is another reason why I'm doing this series. Definitely. And I want women to focus on the fact that, hey, you got here, and you're not supposed to close the door behind you. There are some other young woman who's coming up the rear, and you need to open that door wide and let her in. And when she gets in, you need to hold her hand and show her how to navigate whatever environment that she's in.
And she may be on your right, she may be behind you, she may be right on your heels. And there's no room for intimidation in that environment. Really, it's about holding her up, because a lot of times you may not know that woman, you could say one thing that could derail the rest of her career. One thing that could diminish her her optimism about the future. And that's the reason why, people see me and they're like, you stop and talk to everyone.
Exactly.
Because I don't know whose life I could change in that particular moment.
Exactly.
I don't know if it's one thing I could say, even if it's just, I see you. And we don't do that enough, to look another woman in the eye and say, you're beautiful, I see you. That is so necessary. And I'll tell you, it's debilitating because it wears on you, especially when you start to realize that might be the only kind word she's heard in months, in years. And you find yourself doing it all over the place.
That is something that I believe wholeheartedly in, and I saw that in you, which is why I said this woman needs to share her story.
I'll tell you, and this may help a young woman who is out there watching this show. When I was in my first position, I worked for the federal government, and a woman who was a very high-ranking woman in the government, and she used to, on the side, she sold Mary Kay. So she had her government job, but she also was an entrepreneur and was a Mary Kay saleswoman. And so she used to always try to get me to buy Mary Kay. I said, I don't wear makeup. And one day she said, look, I know you think this is about me selling you Mary Kay, but it's not. If you're a professional woman, you need some color on your face. And you do not need to show up to work again with that plain face.
Yeah.
And I was not offended. I laughed, but it was very clear. She was trying to do it very subtly through this product. And then finally, I got to just tell you. If you're a professional woman. So now fast forward to, I was in Atlanta, and a colleague of mine and I were in a restaurant. And the young woman who was sort of like the maitre d', she came, she was going to seat us. And the woman with whom I was dining said to her, if you don't mind, and she said it much kinder than the woman said to me, she said, if you don't mind, you're a beautiful young girl and you could really be a model and you're right here front and center at the front of this restaurant. I would just really encourage you to maybe put a little color on your face at the front desk. And the girl, she screwed her face up. And she said, who do you think you are to tell me what to wear to work?
Wow.
And the difference between the way you receive information and perceive it, because that woman didn't mean any harm. She really was trying to encourage her. She started off by validating her and saying, you're beautiful.
Right.
But if you're receiving things the wrong way, and that's the other thing I would just say, lose the attitude. Let your guard down.
And a lot of young women, they operate from that space. And I'm not sure where it's coming from, whether it's media, and which is, again, goes back to the point that I was making earlier, why it's so important for professional women or women or whatever position they're in that young women are aspiring to be connected to them. Because I think, too, what happens is, again, going back to media, and I'm in media, we talk so much about all of the negative. Those are the things that we put on a platform and shine a light on. And our young women need to understand that this is not who you were designed to be. And I think you're saying that even though young women may, reject it, keep saying it, because if you hit one, that's one less person who's out there who's going about it the wrong way.
I agree with you precisely. And I would also say that at the end of the day, whether they like it or not, whether they want to receive it or not, because most young women, there's nothing wrong with being self-expressive. You can be self-expressive and appropriate. If I know right now everybody's wearing tattoos, but the thing is, you can't say you want to have an armful of tattoos and you want to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Now, you might be able to be the CEO of your own company, but you also have to decide how far you're going to be able to go with that. And so even if you're going to adorn your body in particular ways, do so in a way that thinks about the future and thinks about how you're going to be perceived. Because unfortunately, no matter how much we want to think self-expression is really just about you, there are people who are still going to, I still have to deal with lots of strange looks because I wear locks. This is a self-expression, but I also have to make sure that my locks are neat and they are tempered, and I can't just do anything I want. So understanding that we're still living in a world where we're battling lots of barriers to how people perceive us as women.
And you're bringing that up, brings up another point. If you, first of all, especially if you're African American, and then you couple that with the fact that you're a woman. If you already are behind the 8 ball, why would you consciously erect more barriers and more distractions to keep you from getting to the end game? And that is the thing that I try to communicate to young women is that why would you want yet another hurdle to have to get over? Now, I want to talk about, we're going to move into talking about your work.
Sure.
Because I'm so excited. I had the opportunity to attend your annual breakfast.
Yes.
And I saw some amazing young people who really were on display for the kind of work and the impact that this organization has had on their lives.
Sure.
Talk to me. What is it, because you're the new president and CEO, what are some of the things that you'd like to see your organization achieve during your tenure?
Well, gosh, I'll tell you, I have very lofty goals because of the way that I feel
and that's a good thing.
The way that I feel about students, and I want them all to succeed. I mean, I say this, and not just in my tenure, but in my lifetime, I want to see a situation where, not just for the College Success Foundation, but for every student who wants to attend college, that no longer is a sort of a dream not to be attained. It's something that can easily be attained between Pell Grants and private monies and the scholarships that we offer. Students can actually complete college either with zero loans or with very, very minimal loans. And so where the ability to attend undergraduate or a 2-year, whatever type of post-secondary education is something that's really possible. The College Success Foundation operates in Washington State and Washington, D.C., and we are indeed breaking down barriers in terms of how students are able to access and complete college. So for me, we want all of our students to graduate. We want them to graduate in less than 6 years so that they can get out into the workforce and begin to, be able to be productive for themselves and their families, but also being able to give back to the community. I mean, at the end of the day, we believe that college degrees are not private benefits, they're public goods. And so
I like that.
Yeah, the investment in these students, the scholarships that we provide, this is really about pushing positive energy and positive good out into the world. And that's what these students are going to do. So for us, this is not really about the individual student. While of course we want them to receive their respective educations, we know that again, these students have siblings, they have neighbors who will be inspired by the fact that they're going to college and what college can do. I still believe very, very palpably that college is indeed the civil rights issue of our time. And if we can attack the educational access issue and completion issue and the barriers to that, I think we're going to end up, really moving us ahead, just like we did with the civil rights movement. This is going to be something that's going to move this particular generation to the next level of the 21st century.
Now, I know that some of your partners, Costco,
Yes.
American Express,
Yes.
I guess the Washington Post is involved in some way. Because as a matter of fact, he was a donor for one of your students, I learned.
Yes.
Talk about some of the other people who were involved and why they're able to see the benefit, especially when you talk about preparing the future workforce. If you can speak to that for a little bit.
Well, the College Success Foundation was co-founded by Bob Craves and Ann Ramsey Jenkins in Washington State. And essentially, they had a vision that if you integrate the various supports in terms of mentorships, scholarships, and then preparing students for college, providing a pathway for college, which we call college readiness and access, those sort of integrated supports provide a wall of support around students. And basically, it creates almost a fail-safe sort of environment. And so in terms of why they thought it was important, at the end of the day, no community can be enriched by only a small segment of the population, those that are, wealthy, middle to upper class being the ones that have access to education. And so for a robust, thriving economy, you really have to have folks working within all of the sectors, public, private, nonprofit, et cetera. You have to really have a sort of a very thriving economy that has everyone engaged. And so when we talk about how folks are able to be employed, we know in today's economy, everyone is going to need some sort of education. And so beyond high school now, a bachelor's degree really almost is rudimentary in terms of how you enter and access the workforce. And so I think what we've been able to see, and this was sort of prognosticated back in the early 2000s when College Success Foundation was founded, is that we need to make sure that all of these students have the opportunity. So while folks tend to say that, college is not for everyone, I think we've seen the real life examples of the fact that without college, those folks are not going to really be able to be successful and can be successful contributors to this economy. And
I want you all out there to know that although they have very large donors and corporations who are involved, there's also a way that you can contribute and be involved in this process. And I want you to, if you would, just talk about how they can, either through mentoring, and it doesn't necessarily have to be money.
Yes.
There are things that that you're probably doing every day that you take for granted, that maybe this foundation can benefit the students by some of the skills and whatnot that you have. So if you could speak to that for us.
Sure. Well, of course, first of all, I would encourage everyone to go to our website, which is collegesuccessfoundation.org, and it's the entire name written out, and essentially to learn more about our various programs. We have a Hometown Mentors program, which, as you alluded to, allows you to get involved. I mean, really, before we take your money, we'd like you to understand what this is really about, because one of the things that any of our donors and investors is able to see very deeply is that the money goes directly to the students. It either goes to the scholarships to fund their tuition and fees at the institutions in which they are enrolled, or to mentors and tutors and all of those who support the students and actually help to advise and guide them along the path to and through college. And so one of the things that you're able to see very quickly is the end product. So when we invite you to that college graduation, you understand that your investment really made a difference. And when you're hearing that those students are in graduate school or in the world of work or are working, because some of them now are employed by the College Success Foundation, paying it forward, that's where the real rubber meets the road.
As far as, I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about in terms of things that people can do to support you, if there are any organizations, or even if there are any corporations that you'd like to reach out to through this interview.
Well, the main thing I would just like to say, we have lots of opportunities to be engaged. And so we have our Leadership 1000 scholarships, where individuals and families can create named scholarship or giving opportunities that will connect them also with individual students with whom they can mentor. So you'll have a dual opportunity to support the students through scholarship funds, but also to mentor them. And so that's one thing I just wanted to also say. I know there are various points of engagement. We have lots of events in Washington State and Washington, D.C. And so if you want to support an event, if you want to volunteer and donate your time, again, our website is your best entry point. And so, for us, this is our life's work. We know that doing this is going to change the world, not just the various locales in which we're situated. We have scholarships that support students all over the country, but at the end of the day, it really is the human touch, not just the scholarship dollars, that makes the difference. So that's my appeal.
Perfect. Yolanda, this has been, I knew when I met you that there was something amazing. I really didn't know your entire story, but now I fully understand. And as I said before, we have a lot of similarities, and I understand why the attraction. And I am absolutely looking forward to lending whatever I can to your efforts, and also having you become involved with your students in some of the things that we're doing in order to raise their platforms.
Most definitely.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, and I'm sure we have a journey to travel together later. And this has been Bonnie McDaniel, and this has been just another segment of our Amazing Women series. Please be sure to tune in again, and we'll have another amazing story to share with you. Thank you for watching.